Okay, and we're off. Welcome everybody to Quality Advocates. There's a lot of familiar faces from our previous meetups, a lot of new faces as well, which is good to see. Really glad to be back here in this interactive roundtable. The last one we had about a month ago was a really good conversation, and I think tonight's conversation is going to be even better. We've got another all-star lineup and another really interesting topic. So really looking forward to getting stuck into the conversation. Obviously, same as before, the conversation very much going to be centered around our four panelists, but please do get comments and questions into the chat. That they'll be answered by our panelists as we go along, and towards the end we'll give everybody a chance to speak up and contribute to the conversation if they have anything that they want to say loud and proud. But yeah, let's very much open and conversational environment here. So let's enjoy it. Let's get stuck into the conversation. A couple of more people joining. Just to introduce myself, my name is Marco. I work for Expertise Recruitment. I head up the QA and testing practice in London. Some of you know me, some of you don't. If you ever want to have a chat about anything, please do just give us a shout. I will now hand over to our panelists to introduce themselves. Susan, off you go.
Hi folks, I'm Susan. I'm a test consultant at the moment for Sainsbury's through an American company called North Highland. Prior to that, I looked after the testing function for EasyJet. And prior to that, I looked after the testing function within Camelot Global, which Marie Carcali now runs. That's me. So I'll hand over to Beth.
Sure. Hi everyone. I am Beth Marshall. I am Senior Test Lead at Smoothwall, and prior to that I was contracting actually for a number of years, and before that I was consulting for a number of years. So yeah, I've done lots of different test lead and test manager roles, and yeah, I'm looking forward to tonight's chat. Shay, do you want to go ahead?
Hey everyone. I'm Shay Crompton. I currently work at a company called The Workshop as a senior quality engineer. Previously, I've been an independent consultant and a consultant for a company called The Test People, working in all sorts of places, gaming, finance, insurance, in leadership roles, and as on the shop floor. So yeah, same as Beth, really looking forward to chatting with everybody tonight. And that leaves one more, Mr. Simon Pryor.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm Simon. I head up the digital test team at EasyJet. Worked with Susan for about 3 months before last summer. I also, if I'm allowed to plug the podcast, which Ben's doing as well, I'm a co-host of the Testing Peers podcast. Thank you, Ben. Oh, Beth as well.
More
there
plugs.
There we go. Tonight.
Good stuff.
Who wants stickers? They can give them away for people's good questions.
Yeah, put addresses in the chat, and Simon will get to send them out. Okay, good stuff. Just before we get started, obviously, if everyone can make sure that their mic is muted. Again, we are recording, so if you want to turn your cameras off, please do. Any questions with voice will be opened up towards the end. But yeah, please do chuck any comments and questions in the chat throughout, and our wonderful panel will address them as they go along. But let's, I guess, kick off with Beth. Opening question: how's your life changed working-wise since the pandemic started about 12 months ago now?
Yeah, so that's quite timely, isn't it? Because it was in the news this week that it'd been a year to today since they announced that we were in a pandemic, and everything changed, didn't it? For us, we had a couple of dry runs at this working from home lark, which my company, it was an informal thing that we used to do fairly regularly anyway. So we found the transition quite smooth, and we've been actually spectacularly productive since we've been all working from home for the last 12 months. So yeah, I'm interested in what happens next, what the next few months are going to look like for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting, isn't it? So yeah, I've gone from being a consultant, a contractor, to being permanently employed, as many people have done that I've seen around in the industry. And yeah, coming up to a year of sort of being, well, my last company I worked for, I was going into London while it was in full lockdown because I was my role demanded it. So going into London when it looked like 2012 or 28 Days Later, or one of those movies, was absolutely freaky. But yeah, now working from home and 100% of the time definitely has its perks. You know, being able to see family and jump out and have lunch and things like that. But it's also got its stresses as well. Having to, well, a lot of people are finding themselves online all the time. You know, when it used to be the people who were, you know, the dedicated ones, or the ones that you sort of go, oh, you know, there's Johnny Do-Good there trying to sort of impress the boss by working at 10 o'clock at night. Nowadays, people are just sort of waking up in the morning and checking emails because their computer's right beside them and things. And I think that's presented quite an interesting situation for people's mental health. You know, I think that's a big topic that has to be talked about now and in the future as we transition back. Is, you know, mentally it was quite challenging coming into lockdown, and now we're coming out probably in a hybrid way of sometimes at home, sometimes in the office. That's a new mental strain, isn't it? So, you know, there's going to be all that kind of fun and games to deal with.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it's something I definitely am still trying to get the balance right. It's when we first went into lockdown last year, it was, you know, it was almost novel, and there was a lot of effort to make sure the team were all okay by regular check-ins, you know, doing social events online, virtually. And it felt like it was a temporary thing. It felt like it was a bit of fun for a little while, and then we'll get back to normality again. And obviously, as time went on, a lot of that stopped. The social interactions were less frequent. I remember April, May last year being absolutely soaked with meetups every lunchtime without fail, every evening without fail if you wanted to be on them as well. And then it slowed down because everyone realized that we were in this for the long run, and things started to unravel a bit. I certainly got to a point where I couldn't distinguish between home and work. So I'd wake up, and as Shay said, you'd be checking your phone for emails. You'd be logging onto your laptop earlier than usual, maybe, you know, while the kids are getting ready for school. You'd be checking stuff. You'd be responding to stuff late in the night as well. And there just wasn't that differentiation anymore. And I did reach a point of being at burnout. I am someone that can't say no to things anyway. So I try and get involved with far too much that more than I can handle, but it made it even more impossible to deal with. And the workload was intense because obviously working for an airline during a pandemic was not a fun experience, as far as, you know, no flying, but let's try and get all the systems ready to go for when it's ready to go again. So there was lots of work as well as cuts being made, projects being canned, people being let go. It was a tough time. And now we're in a place where technology is improving. We're getting used to this collaborative way of working, but it's still a challenge.
Yeah, from my experience, I found it particularly hard when we went into lockdown, mainly because I ended up, my first 2 months were leading the consultation activities for my team, which wasn't great. It really wasn't. And I'd taken a few people on that journey with me. You know, I know it's a work related issue, but actually it felt quite personal as well, because I brought a few people on the journey, and it just wasn't very pleasant for individuals at all. And we had a couple of people that were due to start a week later that had been offered roles that got retracted. We had another guy, one of Simon's colleagues, who joined on one day, and then the following day we're working from home. And so for me, it was awful. It was an awful time leading consultation activities for my team. But I was one of the lucky ones in the sense that although I was impacted and I lost my role as part of the pandemic, I managed to have a month off travelling around the Scottish coastline. Need to get that in first. But I got a contract role quite quickly. And, you know, it's been actually a great experience. I have embraced it. working at Sainsbury's, and when you work for a different organisation, you get exposure to, all the things that you haven't experienced in the other organisations that you've worked for. So yes, it's been not a great time overall, and me personally, I cannot wait to get into the office. I know a lot of people are looking forward to more of a hybrid work model. Myself, I'm one of those people that actually has a preference to be in the office a little bit more, but I know not everybody's the same, and I certainly wouldn't be expecting my team to be in the office just because I am.
I think that's a key point, actually, Susan, of how things have changed, because there was always that expectation in previous roles that you could work from home occasionally, but there's still an expectation to be in the office at some point. And like you say, you kind of set that model for your team as well by doing it for a certain amount of days a week. But it's going to be interesting going forward. It feels like companies will have to embrace this whole personal preference thing, having an office available for somebody, but also giving them the freedom to work from home. And unlike you, I'd like to be able to spend time in the office, probably more often than being at home, but having that split 3 or 2 days a week where I do one or the other would be useful.
Yeah, I think it's making sure that the the leaders within the organisation, that the people that are managing the people or looking after the people, it's just making sure that it's all inclusive. If we're having meetings that are critical to the project, that we are all inclusive, and if people are over Zoom or in the office, that we have the right audience and we don't go ahead just because people are working from home.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's so I was jotting down some ideas today about this, and actually one of the big things I was thinking of was the communication point, because all meetings, all ceremonies and everything are going to have to be online and offline now. And prior to the pandemic, when you have a conference call, there was always that kind of, the people in the room would always be the ones just talking amongst themselves kind of thing, having a conversation together. And there's got to be a mental switch where the people who are virtually joined, even if it's on the phone itself or hopefully sort of, using a video call, have to be included. So, you can't just sort of sit there and chitter chatter to the person beside you about something that the whole team may want to have an input in. So there's, I think, from a leader, the facilitation of meetings like that, there's going to be that kind of learning where you have to keep an eye out for those traps, those pitfalls, and try and work those out of the meeting situations. So you're all aware of the people who are virtual as well as the people who are in the office.
I definitely agree with that, Shay. I think the sort of 3 main areas for me that are kind of going to be ones that I think people should be thinking about now, rather than wait until something goes wrong and there's tension, is definitely comms is a really big one. So, maybe think about, even if you're in the office, having meetings at your desk, signing onto Zoom, rather than 50% go in a meeting room and the other 50% dial in. Things like that I've heard work quite well. I think the other 2 decisions are, what's your kind of default mode as an organization? Is your default mode being in the office, or is your default mode working from home, or is it genuinely a free-for-all individualistic thing? And then kind of an MVP mode. So what's your absolute, as a employee, what are your absolute, or as a team, what are the days where you really want everyone to be there, or you have to work from home? What are your MVP days? And I think getting ahead of that conversation would save kind of tension later on. I know these things aren't always easy to do, but I can see that being more of a bone of contention now than it ever was before.
I think something else that of meetings particularly that I think it's been good that there's been a lot more productivity and everyone being remote, but I think a negative of that is you used to be confined to the size of the meeting room, how many people you could invite to the meeting. So you'd make sure the key people were there. And now you'll get on calls where you probably only have 5 or 6 decision makers, but you've got 40 people on the call because everyone's bought their number 2, or they've brought 2 or 3 of their team along because they want to. So you end up with a call that's just absolutely saturated with people that don't need to be there, and it makes the meetings very difficult to keep on track. So it's good that we can all be remote and sit at our desks and have the meetings. But the other thing with that as well is people that you would have had 5-minute conversations walking to their desk and having a chat now book a half an hour meeting in your calendar. And certainly in my experience, I find my calendar from 8:30 to 5:30 is back-to-back meetings with no gaps in between.
Yeah, I think I find that most frustrating. I think that I find that really frustrating. The fact that I used to be able to have like a 5-minute conversation by the coffee machine, and to get an answer to something, I need to set up a Zoom call to speak to somebody sometimes, which is a bit painful. Shall I have a go at answering Ben's question? But obviously this is from my thoughts, and I'm sure that the panel will also have their view and experience as well. So I think Ben asked a question. Most roles I've seen seem open to say remote until the end of the pandemic. Do you feel companies have really embraced work from home? My experience, so where I am at Sainsbury's at the moment, they've absolutely embraced work from home from what I can see. And I expect post-pandemic, most people won't go in the office, or if they do, it's just going to be one day a week for some key conversations that are taking place. However, I have been in discussions with other companies and absolutely, they've definitely not embraced it. I think they're waiting for to see what a few more other companies make and what their decision is. Some companies still haven't made a decision about whether they're going back or not. And I'll be honest, I don't think all companies have truly embraced work from home. But it's got to be driven by the leadership. It's got to be the mindset of the leadership team to truly make this work. And it's about empowering teams. I mean, to be efficient at your role, do you need to be in the office? No, I don't think so. But I don't see that all leaders will see that in the same way. Yeah, they say, don't they, that there's I think there was some stats around it really, around yeah, there was a Garda poll where they talked about some HR leaders. Not only do they need to have the mindset to support hybrid work models, but they also need to have the skill sets as well. And quite often they have one without the other.
Okay. Now, yeah, and I think that's where we're going to have to ramp up pretty quickly all around. So, going back to with the remote until the end of pandemic, I think there's going to be a lot of people power there, being able to turn to the company and say, listen, I function as well, if not better, working from home. If you want me in, go to Beth's point, what is the absolute minimum that I need to be in for? And then the leadership is going to have to be strong enough to make those decisions and empower the people to empower their teams to make those decisions. So Susan, you said you might you like being in the office. Well, you as a leader, that's the example you're going to give. So your challenge may have to be to your team to say, listen, this is my preferred way of working. This is an open forum though, and if you have a preferred way of working, absolutely bring it out, and we can work that out, because I don't want you following me into the office and hating it. I'd rather you being comfortable in your role and being the most productive you can in the way that best suits you. So there's Absolutely. Going to be a lot of challenge there.
Absolutely.
I think, yeah, you're right. And I think historically there was always this element of lack of trust on people that worked remotely. Were they actually working? Were they just sat playing with the kids, or I don't know, playing the PlayStation, or doing something other than doing their work during the day? Whereas I think there has been that mindset shift to realize that people are productive. And it still baffles me that it's so random over whether companies are willing to embrace it going forward or not. And some of the banking sector and some of the other big companies in London have certainly come out and said we expect everyone back in the office. Whereas my experience at the moment is that's not the expectation generally across the tech sector. There just seems to be generally, we've seen that people can work remotely, especially with, the cloud and everything being available in the cloud now, rather than having to be in the office to log into anything. it really does serve purpose that you can work from anywhere and you can be productive. It's more about making sure you've got a setup at home that allows you to be as productive as you would be in the office. So therefore, we need to be making sure that companies are offering to support setting up a home office if they haven't got one already, and providing some kind of allowance that enables people to get the equipment they need to be able to do what they would do at an office, or enable them to go and collect monitors and chairs and desks and whatever else from the office that are no longer needed because the office is being shrunk down in size, or whatever it is, just making it accessible to ensure that everyone can do the job in the way they need to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a bravery that the companies need to undertake. And I was listening to a cybersecurity podcast recently, and the person being interviewed said that when he talks to people about the cybersecurity of their organizations during pandemic, he asks them how many offices they have, and they say, well, just the one. He says, how many people do you have? Well, I've got 2,000. Then you have 2,000 offices because everybody's at home in their own office at the moment, and that's the security problem. Organizations have to realize that and be brave and go, listen, you're working from home, that's great. Let's make sure we buy great chairs in the office. Well, look, that chair can come to you in your home because you're spending more time in your home office and your monitor and your stuff. So you're not there sitting at the dining table trying to work on the smallest screen of a laptop or the slowest laptop possible. Be brave, realize what's going on and sort of lean into it. And if organizations do that, then it'll be a better working place and it'll be quicker transition into this sort of hybrid working model that I think we're going to end up in.
So one of the questions being asked in the chat from Andrew was around how they found hiring during the pandemic.
That's a good question. I mean, for the company where I work, I get involved in interviewing a lot, but I'm not the hiring decision maker, if you like. But as a direct result of the pandemic, we have, for the first time in our history at Smoothwall, started hiring with geography not being a boundary anymore. So previously we were probably restricted realistically to a 50-mile radius of Leeds, which, although it's a big metropole and an awesome city, you know, that restricts your kind of tech gene pool quite a lot, really. So now we've been able to hire people from Serbia. We've got someone in Turkey. We've got someone in Finland, I think, all over. And the main driver is skill, you know, skill and reputation over location. And that works for the employees that we've got as well. So we have employees that, you know, maybe not when all the airlines have closed and there's travel restrictions too much, but prior to that, they were having extended breaks with their family in another country and working just the same, and they were just as productive as me sat at my desk working from Leeds. You know, that ability to work from everywhere is a really exciting development, I think. I think we're very lucky to work in tech for that.
I think some companies have definitely embraced that more than others. I mean, I'm hiring for the first time since I've been at EasyJet this month. We've had a ban on hiring, obviously, for the whole of last year, which due to the pandemic, and we are literally restricting them to UK-based roles, UK-based people at the moment, because we're not sure how it works from a HR perspective and everything else, having people employed outside of the UK, especially with Brexit as well. It adds extra complexities. But there was talk of, well, given the flight network from Luton, then people could live in Belfast, Edinburgh, wherever else. And if they need to get to the office, it's a 45-minute flight from Edinburgh or whatever down to Luton. You can do that in a day, et cetera, et cetera. So there is options that we're looking at there. But you're right, it does open that pool up. Certainly, even UK is a bigger pool than just Luton or 50 miles of Luton. So,
and I think to be hired, you have to lift your game as well. When my last contract finished, I started examining what it was to try and get hired, and I think you have to be pretty hot on trying to build your own brand and your way of trying to be hired. So that's increasing the strength of your communication, increasing your footprint. So liking LinkedIn posts, blogs, getting on Twitter, things like that. So to be hired now, you have to show yourself why you are better than somebody anywhere in the world, you know. And that's there's a pressure on there as us trying to find a job seekers. So from that point of view, yeah, it's quite an interesting place to be in. It's no longer, well, you know, to use Simon's thing, well, I'm guaranteed a job almost at EasyJet because I'm within the catchment area, so I can, you know, I just go there. There's a lot more people vying for your job now, possibly.
I also wonder, like with the wider family network, what will happen post the pandemic. And what I mean by that is you've got kids, you've got parents that have had young children who they've been used to having their parents around. Yes, they might be on Zoom calls, but they've been available. They're not doing the commuting, etc. Also, you've got things like pets. I know it sounds a bit silly, but there's going to be lots of traumatized pets when their parents go back to work as well.
Yeah, we got puppies during the pandemic, so yeah, they're not used to us being away. So absolutely.
I think my cat's walking around the house going, I can finally relax anywhere in the house. The kids aren't here.
You're right. There does have to be that flexibility for businesses to understand that people have families now, and there always was that awareness. But there always was also that expectation that your work comes first in a lot of places where, you know, yes, you've got kids at home, but we still expect you to be on these meetings at this time, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas I am noticing that seems to be loosening slightly, and there's a lot more flexibility about, you know, we'll arrange the meeting at the time when everyone is available, whether that be late in the afternoon after school pickup, or we know times are completely out. 2:30 to 3:30 is not a good time for any meetings because that's school kick out time. So let's arrange ones when people can definitely be on the calls. That seems to be kicking in a bit more around that. But you're right, there definitely has to be that option around people have families as well. So we need to make sure that's in the equation.
Do you think that's something that will, do you think that's something that will stick though, Simon? Or do you think the amount of empathy, the pool of empathy that we're currently in as kind of working parents or people with other commitments, do you think that pool will just get drier and drier and drier the more people get back into what they think is a normal environment?
I think that's the empathy mindset, isn't it? That's the part of the mindset that leadership have to take on is, you know, we are hiring humans, we're not hiring robots. We are hiring people that have lives outside of the office. We just need to, you know, look after them as best as possible, and by looking after them in the best possible way, we'll get the most out of them. And it's finding that balance and how we do that. But you're right, there may be that in some places, there will be that place of, well, okay, the pandemic's over now, everything back to normal. We're all going to go back into focusing 9 till 5 on work. I'm not sure that's ever going to be the norm anymore.
And it never was, you know. So when pandemic first happened, you know, that where there was the pressure of, you know, there was organizations asking to install like keyloggers or whatever on your machine, or mouse trackers, so they knew that your mouse was moving, so you were at work. And that was the common misconception, that when you were at 9 o'clock, you clocked in, and 5 o'clock, you clocked out. And during that time, you were 100% working. Well, the truth is absolutely different. You know, when you look at, say, planning a sprint in Agile, you think about 60% utilization of your team. Well, 60%, if you get 60% out of somebody on a day at work, that's pretty impressive. So, you know, 40% of that time is time where they're getting up and having a coffee, you know, going for lunch, doing various other things that, you know, staring into the ceiling or whatever, thinking about a problem. That happened at home, and the misconception was everybody is working 100% in the office. Well, you're going to get back into the office and know that within yourself that you're not working 100% of the time, and that's going to be hopefully the management will sort of have realized that it isn't 100% all go all the time, and that's why working from home will be okay, because we know that you're doing the best you can wherever you are.
One thing that I've observed, and this isn't through work actually, this is just due to family circumstances, because I've got older kids, is they're at the point now where they either go to university. I've got a son at university, and I've got a daughter who's now looking for apprenticeship, does not want to go down the university route. Is the way that they're recruiting for some of the apprenticeships. So I've been really, really surprised since the pandemic. And maybe it was happening before, but I was just surprised at how little direct face-to-face contact that they have. So they can go through 1 or 2 rounds of interviews without actually having a Zoom meeting or meeting anybody in person. They have to fill in questionnaires that are online. They need to video themselves answering some questions and submit some of the answers. And I've been quite shocked by that actually, because these are youngsters who they're going to be us in the next 10 years actually. And even though they are completely used to being online, they found it quite hard actually, like submitting videos of themselves answering questions about a potential apprenticeship program. I've been quite shocked by that actually. I thought, it's quite upsetting really to think that some big brand companies are doing that.
Yeah, I think that's maybe down to the sheer number of people applying, because there's so many people available at the moment. But I absolutely agree with you that going 2 or 3 rounds into an interview situation and not speaking to a person, that's harsh, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, given that we're going to expect these people to get into a work environment and be excellent communicators, and you're pretty much cutting off their left arm before doing anything else. That's I don't see that as a sort of sustainable way of doing it.
You raise a good point there as well, though. I mean, are we, if we do go down this model where everyone is working from home completely and the only communication they get with their colleagues is through Zoom and whatever else, are we building a generation that can't do face-to-face interaction, that struggle when they're in person? Because I'm just thinking, it's not just the workplace, it's going to conferences and meetups and other events where there's a social aspect as well as the work aspect. I don't want this to be purely virtual going forward. I want to be able to get back to in-person events. But if we're so built going forward in this virtual world, are we disabling the future generations from a full communication tool set because they won't be used to being able to walk up to someone in an office and having a 5-minute conversation because they know they have to book a half an hour slot or book a slot in someone's calendar for a call, instead of doing the bits that we all took for granted, bumping into someone at the coffee machine. Oh, I need to talk to you. We'll just talk about this. Whereas those random occurring events don't happen anymore. Everything has to be planned, or you have to ping someone, can we have a call? It's an interesting, different way of thinking about things, I think.
Yeah, I think so. One of the things I've that in the workshop where I'm at the moment, but also in my personal life, is having an open call, as it were, an open room where you can jump into. So some of you know and have been on the call with me. I have a tester hangouts that I just have open with me whenever I can during the workday, and anybody can join. They can come in and sit, and they can say nothing or whatever. But what I've found is it's like having someone sitting next to you, and then when you just want to ask a question, you ask a question. And I think maybe that might be something that is useful for the future, is you have an open room and where people are virtually sitting together, either in the office or outside, and so they can just sort of say, oh, Dave, what was that thing you wanted to do? Or, hey, let's jump on another room just quickly to do a quick bit of pairing or something like that. And having the forum available for sitting there and being able to speak virtually face to face with the chitter chatter, I think is something that's worth exploring.
I think you're right. I think there's something there that Zoom and Teams and those kind of tools are missing, as far as having a facility to have an open room where you can have multiple. Yes, you could book a meeting that lasts all day, I guess, but it just feels like it's not what it's meant to be used for in some respects. But you're right, Google Hangouts works quite well for that. And I have toyed with trying it with my team and seeing if we can set up a daily thing where it's on all the time for anyone to drop into when they want to. But yeah, it's definitely a way of trying to recreate what we're missing from the office.
And I think turn it around to the team members, to people who are not perhaps the leaders of the teams. The challenge, I think, for everyone is to be more engaged, both up the line and down the line with whomever they are conversing with. So, you know, everybody should be able to manage their manager. They should be able to sort of have a one-to-one with them and talk with them openly and have honest conversations, as well as with their teammates. So coming in, having forums where you can have open and honest conversations, like an open room, I think is really important, where you can go in and sit down, but you have to engage. So the team has to, I really think, has to sort of step up and go, right, I am going to put myself in this room every day from 2 till 4. If I say nothing, that's fine. If I chat with people, that's fine as well. But I have to step forwards. Regardless of what position I am in, this facility is available. I need to step into it.
Ben's just pointed out that Discord has got an open room.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, that kind of open room thing may be a tool to use in the future, where people can have those water cooler chats and just hang out.
Somebody else is recommending Clubhouse. Oh, that's Beth.
I think Beth's our expert on Clubhouse, definitely.
Yeah, I've had 3 sessions on Clubhouse. Would you believe it? But yeah, I do agree completely, Shay, that this need for a kind of casual chat is something that we're all feeling deprived of. You know, I really miss that time after a meetup where you can just grab a beer from a table and just see who you can speak to, and I miss that. I miss everything being recorded and feeling like, you know, you're under the spotlight all the time. I'm really looking forward to being back in the physical world. I think a really good question that Anya asked, that I think is quite interesting one. What do you think about career advancement? Do you think working from home could be detrimental to career development or promotion, especially in a hybrid model? Anyone want to answer that one?
Gosh.
It is a tough one. I think you have to be a bit more bullish if you want to progress, I think, in the remote world, because you have to be the one that's pushing the agenda, you finding the opportunities yourself to do it, and it's less organic. I think it is more forced in those scenarios, and it's, as a leader as well, I'm having to actively try and find ways to progress my team, whereas it would come out naturally in conversation or seeing people work day to day in the office. You'd be able to see how they're progressing, you see how they interact with other people, whereas now you're having to almost recreate those opportunities for them to be able to prove themselves, which can be quite difficult. So it is a challenge, but I think we're all in this world now. We're all trying to find our way. I think it's a way of muddling through and finding the best solutions.
And this comes back to engagement, doesn't it? And taking your career by the scruff of the neck and deciding where you want to go. If you want to advance in your career, you be engaged. You need to manage your manager. So you need to ensure they understand what you're doing and what you want to do. If they're not doing one-to-ones with you, you need to force the situation so you're having those touch points, virtual or in person. And then beyond that, you need to have those conversations with yourself and with others about where you want to go in your career. Draw yourself a map and figure out how to get there. And if that is every day, so finishing up the last 10 minutes of your day, going to your manager and going, hey, I'm great, look at me, what I did today, do it. You know, make sure they know. You don't get anywhere in any office if you sit there and don't do anything and don't say anything and don't put yourself forwards. It's very rare. So take yourself aside and have a think about where you want to be, and absolutely have at it. And that will be communicating with your manager. You have to do it. Can you tell I'm passionate about this subject? I sorry.
Yeah. No, completely agree, Shay. It's quite interesting, isn't it? Because I know sometimes when I used to sit in physical meeting rooms, I don't know, maybe you're having a workshop of some description, and sometimes you find you've got a lot of people that are quite vocal, they've got some great ideas, but sometimes you have the people that are quiet and they're not so vocal or forthcoming, but actually some of those ideas that they have are some of the best ideas. And how do you invoke that over Zoom or Teams?
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I think this is one of those things as a leader, you know, we're going to need to understand and learn about sort of, you know, when you're in a meeting room, you can sit there as you're facilitating, you can take half a step back and just go, okay, James hasn't said anything. He always says something good. Let's just wait until, and then I'm going to ask his opinion and things like that. I think there's an element of maybe artificially putting that in of before the end of the meeting or before the end of a topic, doing around the room kind of thing, virtually and in person or something like that. There must be tools to get people to have their say so that you understand what their opinions are. It's hard if you're an introvert to put yourself forward in the way that I just described. I think it's you know, us as leaders maybe need to recognize that a bit more and maybe help and coach people to be able to say that, you know, speak their mind a bit easier.
And making the environment safe to speak as well.
Oh man, yes.
Hugely important. Yeah, absolutely. I think it also leads on to the collaboration tools as well, doesn't it? I mean, having the right kind of tools to work with, and I know one we've plugged on the podcast quite a lot is Metro Retro, and Miro's the other one as well, that are really good whiteboarding tools that you can get the whole team involved on, and you can have that workshop-like experience where everyone's working together, everyone's collaborating. And it's a breath of fresh air from just having a meeting where someone's got a document open and you're talking through it or what have you. Just finding ways to make the meetings more engaging, which means people aren't dialed into the call but on their phones because they're not needing to talk, etc., because they have an active role to play in the meetings. And yes, not everyone wants their cameras on, and that's fine. You know, we have to accept that not everyone feels comfortable having cameras on. So there can't be that expectation that everyone has to be on FaceTime all the time. We have to put those things in place to make people feel comfortable. And the more comfortable we make them feel, the more open they'll be in their communications.
Yeah. Somebody's, I'm just talking with somebody about that sort of bringing out introverts. I think if you, and talking, ensuring everybody has the place to communicate. There's a really amazing TED talk called The Power of Introverts. And I think if you have any love of being a leader, that is a must on your watch list, because it really taught me a little bit about sort of that look around the room to see the people who haven't talked and wait and see and wait to give them the time to make get their thoughts together and allow them to have their time to speak, because of everybody else in the room just speaking around. Just keep an eye out for those guys, and that's something that I think, as I said, if you have a wish to be a leader or better yourself as a leader, I highly recommend looking at that.
Share the link, please.
I will find it. I'll try and find it subtly here and not look like I'm on my computer.
One thing I have noticed that I do, and honestly, I found it quite shocking in a few cases where I've been on team calls, etc., is I'm quite observant to people's body language. And I have noticed actually people's eyes rolling, people quite clearly not paying attention. And it's what's the word that I'm looking for? But it's a bit disrespectful actually when somebody else is speaking. But yeah, I've noticed that I've become a lot more observant around body language over Zoom.
It's that same thing of, I mean, in one of my old places, we had this etiquette where everyone either turned their phones off or put them face down on the table in front of them before, as we started a meeting, because, you know, people were distracted by their phones, especially if meetings went on for longer than half an hour or so. And now, especially where people have got multiple screen setups, they think it's subtle when they're looking at another screen, and that you can see they're typing away on something, and you're not sure whether they're typing in the chat of the meeting or whether they're doing something else. And I know what it's like, because, you know, the nature of the world at the moment, you're getting emails all the time while you're on the meeting. And if you're not talking, you feel it's safe to respond to those emails, or you're responsible for 2 or 3 projects at the same time, and someone else is sending something through while you're on the call, and they need you to review it now. And it's just, you're trying to multitask. And I think multitasking is one thing that people are trying to do more often now than they were before. But yeah, you're right. Body language is a giveaway.
Yeah, I think it's important to be engaged. It seems to be the postman seems to interrupt most of the meetings nowadays.
The Amazon man, yeah.
Yeah, the Amazon deliveries.
Well, how many people, when we used to be in offices and you were chairing a meeting, held phone down or no phone meetings or laptop closed meetings? Because I did it a few times. Quite often I'd allow people to sort of have laptops open, but at the start I'd sort of make it clear, listen guys, this is the main thing. If there's an emergency, if there's something on fire, absolutely open your laptop, go for it, but please have respect. And I've also been in meetings where people like the CEO have been thrown out of meetings because they've been on their phone tapping away, and it's like, dude, come on, you know, show respect. You know, again, as a leader, you've got to lead as you want people to follow, and so
exactly. And if they're allowed to break the rules, then it just defies the point for everyone else, doesn't it? So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Just to add on to that, how do we face the problem when we do come into this new hybrid workforce where you have got, let's say, half the people who are working from home and half the people who are in the office in the same meeting? How do you manage that moving forward? Because I guess that's one of the challenges moving forward, is when you haven't got everybody in the same place and you haven't got everybody on the same platform. How is that then managed by our leaders? What's being put into place? What's out there? What tools are out there for leaders to use to be able to manage that?
I think the first thing would be try and make it an even playing field and encourage everyone to log in by themselves rather than having a group of you in a meeting room. Yes, it might mean that the meeting room is not used, but actually, if everyone's in the same place, even if you're sat in the office and sat in a row next to each other in one of the desks, all logging in separately, it gives everyone that same experience rather than, like we said earlier, having that room of people that are nattering between themselves while there's 3 or 4 people on the call that can't really make sense of what's going on. There's going to have to be movements and it's down to the leaders and the people in the team that are coordinating the meetings to say, let's make this fair for everyone. Let's make this accessible. Let's try and do something where everyone feels as important as each other, rather than we've got the room of the important people and the few that can't make it that are on the phone. It just, we're going to have to try and use it as best we can to go with the techniques we've got with the tools we're now using online at the moment.
Yeah, collaboration is key, isn't it? Having meetings where I think also being aware of meeting fatigue is important. We're all talking about how if we can't go to the water cooler to have a chat while we're getting a coffee, we have to pull somebody onto the onto a Zoom call or something like that. Having no meeting times or being aware of somebody else's calendar, because I book out times when I want to, if I'm like, okay, I need the next half hour to do something, I'll book myself out. But people don't respect that. So I think there's that respect thing of, understand that meeting fatigue can happen for yourself, but also for your team, and try and work around that.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Definitely try and find time to block time out for everybody, whether it's at different times, but allow everyone to have their time to block out. But and also don't book important meetings at 4:00 in the afternoon. I think by that point, when people have been on calls since 9 a.m, then you're not going to get the best out of people. If you need a decision to make, let's book it in a slot where everyone's refreshed. One of the meetings we had recently, just after August, September time last year, when things started to get back on their feet, our boss gave us all a £5 token for coffee. to go and get our own coffee delivered from Deliveroo or Uber Eats, whatever it was at the time. I think it was Uber Eats. So we could have a coffee in a meeting, just so it gave you a little encouragement of, we know it's difficult, but here you go, here's a token of a gesture to say, we're all in this together. Let's have the meeting. Let's have our coffees. And it just, little things like that. Obviously, you can't do that for every meeting, but if you start something to encourage people, we're going to start having this meeting at 10 a.m. rather than 4 p.m., so that we can start fresher, then maybe that's something we can look at. It's just doing little things sometimes to try and bring people around.
And it's we who have the power to change that as leaders. And that's where I think the thinking is going at the moment. You've got to be able to look, it's the pressure on us. This is the other thing is, like, we've got new pressures coming in as leaders that we've never expected to have. Is how do you manage this hybrid workforce? How do you lead? How can you be present? How can you lead as people, and how can you lead in a way that nurtures people up to be a leader such as yourself if you care for your craft? And so, being able to have things like a joint coffee together, or have an open space where people can chat, I think is really, really important. And the challenge for us is to make sure that we're doing that a little bit or just enough. And that's going to find a balance, but yeah, it's quite important.
I think one thing quite interesting, one of the first challenges that's going to come to our leaders will be is actually just the thought of it itself, in terms of how am I going to manage this hybrid workforce, whereas actually the job is going to still remain. You still have projects that need to be completed on time, and the first thing is actually going to be trying not to pay too much attention to it. It's solving the problem without taking your finger off the pulse from the actual day-to-day and your actual projects that needs to get done. So it certainly adds another pressure to leaders, which I think is something should be taken into consideration by people within the teams as well, because it's obviously new for everybody. It's not something that anyone's going to have the perfect solution to immediately, and of course, same with everything, there'll be teething problems. So I think there has to be a level of give and take from both sides. That it might not be perfect to start with, and there'll be elements of it that are really frustrating. But I guess it draws back to what Shay was saying about the collaboration and actually all just working towards that common goal. And again, the job is going to remain. There's still going to be projects that need to be completed by a certain time, and how can you make sure that you get the right balance so that you don't sacrifice one for the other?
Yeah. I've noticed that I think it was Richard asked a question about inductions earlier, and I'd like to sort of come around to that, if that's okay, because that's just one of the biggest minefields that are going on at the moment. I'm fortunate that the company I joined has really given it some thought and engages us coming into the workplace. So the way I've seen it done well, which I think I'm in at the moment, is that each new starter has a Confluence page with everything they need to know, and is asked to book meetings with all of the significant people in their team and in the organization, and the management, the sort of upper management, make themselves available to the new starters as well. So you are expected to book time with them, and they are expected to take that time, to make that time to be part of it. And I have a buddy who has been in the company for a while, and he pushes me along. He sort of checks in with me regularly. Where are you at? Do you need any help with this? What do you need? And I'm always able to chat to him, and it's one of his priorities of the day to come back to me on any questions I have. And I think that's actually quite a good way of doing it. And having somebody there in the organization who is absolutely present for you, I think is key. I think that's the one thing that is key to a good induction is knowing who to go to and having them empowered to have you as their priority. I think that's probably a good one. Yeah,
I'd agree with that. And I would kind of add, I think it's important that as a new starter, you have that relationship with someone that is informal. So you have to be able to ask the stupid questions to somebody. there has to be that person that you can say without feeling like you're going to be judged, when is it payday? You know, all of that, the stuff that you always, you have to ask somebody. And normally it is when you're just meeting someone for a coffee and it slips into conversation organically. But one of the things that I've always tried to do since this has been going on, if I know someone is a new starter or it's someone that I've interviewed, I will always reach out to them on LinkedIn before they start and just say, hi, really excited to have you. Please ask me all of those questions that you want to ask someone. That is what we're here for. It's exactly as you say, Shay, establishing that informal kind of buddy or mentor relationship, so they have they can have a formal go-to person, but an informal, this person knows everybody and they know the way it really works kind of, you know, level of chat as well.
I think I've been trying to build my induction plan out for the new starters that I've got coming in the next few months. And I've learned, one thing I've done is that something that Susan did for me when I joined EasyJet to start with was clear my calendar for 2 or 3 days so that I can be with them, you know, do like Shay said, and have an open room with them so I can sit down, show them stuff, give them time to think about stuff, but be there present at the same time to talk them through stuff, let them get on with their induction stuff, but sit there working as well and just answer any questions and sort of help them bed into the company, giving them the point of contacts to go and have meetings with, pointing them at the resources they need to go and read and look up, and just being that point of call for my new team members. It helps build that bridge as a leader with a new team member to start with, because you're building that relationship from the very start. But it's also encouraging them and nurturing them into the company as well, which I think is a useful way of starting off, and then potentially giving them a buddy that's not their manager within the organization as well, that they can work with side by side and learn together.
This is where that hybrid element becomes so important, isn't it? Where actually being able to have that physical contact and that physical meet.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're an absolute wizard, nobody's going to be able to build relationships the same way as they did before. Love that, by the way, guys. Nobody's going to be able to build relationships as well as they could before over a camera. You know, there's obviously people have now got used to onboarding, you know, over a camera, but you're not going to be able to build relationships the same way. So that hybrid week is going to become so much more effective, and that's where you get the importance from it, I think.
Yeah, on board. Sorry, go ahead, Susan.
You go, Beth.
I think one of the, for me, certainly for me, one of those MVP must be in the office days is onboarding. Is someone's first day, someone's first week. That's one of the things that you can't beat face to face. I don't think you can't improve on it. So that would definitely be one of my things that I'd ask for if I was joining a new company around that were hybrid. You know, how do you look at onboarding? Is that something that you think about doing face to face, or what's that process?
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things that I am relieved about now is when we went into this pandemic and we started to have like catch-ups with team, etc. It seemed to evolve around team quizzes. But I think organisations have just moved on from that. Honestly, if I never do another quiz, even with the family. So people have been a little bit more innovative. And you
organised some of ours, didn't you? You organised the quiz for our team.
And I think I got drunk at one of them as well, probably.
Probably.
But now we can have a Zoom call and we can actually just hang out, which is great. We haven't got to answer another quiz, although I don't mind the chocolate quizzes. They were quite good, if it's real chocolate.
Yeah, virtual events are an interesting thing. We do a Thirsty Thursday every week at the workshop, and it's interesting because, again, you know, it's again talking about engagement. So if you're in the office and they put out a load of you know, snacks and drinks and beers or whatever, and if you want to just be at your desk, you go and get one and you go back to your desk. Or if you want to hang out, that's your choice to hang out. Mm-hmm. I've found that with these kind of virtual drinks that there's not as much engagement. You kind of have to push. you have to sort of remind people, hey, look, let's go and do the drinks, and let's go and anybody ready for it. And I think maybe that's yet another thing heaped on us as leaders, is if we want people to sort of socialize, we kind of have to be the ones that help them out. If there's nobody in the team that takes on that role, I think it's important we try and help people to socialize. And there may be a little bit of sort of, carrot and stick at times, but it's like, come and play, come and chat, come and be part of it, come and stand at the water cooler and don't think about work. Let's just do something that is general chit chat and see where we get to. And I think that can help build a stronger team. If we're all talking about work all the time, it's kind of not going to be a functional team. You're never going to get a high performance team.
No, absolutely. Completely agree with that.
I think as well, it's important that social events and kind of like treats and things for the team, they're not contingent on results. It's not a question of, hey, if we do well, then we'll do this. There needs to be something that ties the team together on a social basis, looking at a mental health perspective, because I think everyone as leaders, and even people, as team members, will know that you'll get more results if your team members are happy and that they're comfortable in the place that they work. And if you give them that basic social need, which is something that everybody needs, whether it's inside or outside of work, they'll perform better. And I think I've seen a few companies which have, especially over this pandemic, it's been like, hey, if we can keep up this level of work, then we'll organize this. And it's like, okay, that carrot and stick is great, but I think there needs to be that level of security with the social element as well.
Yeah, you're right there. And as well, especially in the current working world, you put a carrot in place like that, and it's going to put people to burnout more than they would be if they're in the office, because they'll want that social interaction in some respects, some of them. And if it is taking them from working from 7 to midnight every day, because the work aren't seeing what hours they're doing, but they're doing this work behind the scenes, it's just going to encourage a culture of burnout.
Yeah, I think to be fair, that kind of leads off a question. I think it was Violetta that asked a question earlier about how you manage burnout virtually, and actually how can you spot it? Because, like you say, now I think especially when lockdown first started, there was a lot more pressure to do more work, because again, we touched on it earlier, there was that lack of trust from businesses and in people to actually work. So that I think people had a lot of a feeling to think, oh, I've got to work longer, I've got to work harder, I've got to make sure that I'm doing more than I was before to show that I can be trusted. And that obviously heaps on a load of pressure, but that's pressure that your manager's not going to physically be able to see now, because your manager won't see you staying in the office when he leaves or she leaves. And how do you manage that moving forward? How is that something you manage when there's one person here, one person here? How's that something you can firstly identify and then secondly manage?
It comes down to being able to have that relationship with the person and have the communication. I had one in my team. She lived alone. She won't mind me saying this, but she lived alone when the pandemic started, and she was completely cut off because of being in lockdown, and she was working every hour possible because that was the only thing she had to do. She was scared of going out, everything else. So I made a point of having a daily call with her, where it's up to her whether she wanted to put a camera on or not, but we literally just sat and chatted how she was doing. Was there anything I could do to help? Could I help in sort of order shop or something for her? Just encourage her to do some normal stuff rather than focus on work, and give her that break and say, look, just go and enjoy an hour of Netflix or whatever. Just go and switch off. You need to switch off from work. And eventually she came round and she was a lot more chatty and a lot more productive again, because she started to realize that this was something she needed to get through. It was tough for her, but burnout definitely was something you could see starting to brew. And you'd be on team calls and she'd be silent, and she's not silent usually. So it was kind of I need to do something here to try and help her. But it has to be down to communication. But as a leader, you need to do everything you can to check in with your team as often as possible and make sure they're okay.
If anyone knows of any training around that kind of thing that's coming through, I'd really love to hear about it, because
agreed.
I think if you've got mental health first aider, and I've not done the course, and I don't know if there is a module of that deals with it, but I think this is definitely something that we need to be thinking of in the future, for ourselves and for others. Is what are the signs that someone is disengaging, and therefore there's a danger or something like that. So, you know, I think that's really something that, please, if somebody's got a course, do send it through. I really am keen to hear about that.
I think something that this pandemic has got us used to is kind of uncertainty and events happening that you couldn't foresee at quite a quick, on the turn of a sixpence, really, things can change. And I think sometimes those balls being lobbed at a team or an organisation is a trigger point. I know certainly when the schools shut back down again in January, you know, I was looking at the other carers, the other people with childcare responsibilities in my organisation, and reaching out to them individually and saying, you know, how are you finding this? This is awful, isn't it? No one saw this coming. We all thought they were going back. How are you coping? And kind of as a group, then we were then able to sort of raise that as an issue. Look, the people here that have these responsibilities need just that little bit more leeway. And we were managed to all come to an agreement, you know, with the higher ups and stuff, who were super supportive, and were able to give that time. And sometimes it's not easy to spot. And it wasn't until after the fact that another mum there said to me, I'm so glad you raised that, Beth, because I wouldn't have done it. And I haven't left the house in 3 weeks because it's dark when I finish work and I don't want to go out. And you just think, whoa, like I didn't see that coming. So yeah, it's a very hidden thing, isn't it? It's hard to spot, but it doesn't need to be a leader that spots it, drives it.
I don't know what it's like where you're working, but where I am currently, they've been extremely flexible, I have to say, with some of the working families. So a lot of people that were perhaps just doing 9 to 5 before are working completely flexible hours now, and they've got the ability to be able to do that. So they can work around the kids, some of the homeschooling activities that need to happen. So that's been really nice to see, actually. It's positive. I'm not sure if all organisations are following a similar sort of approach, though.
I think many are, once they sort of realise that this is the best way to approach it. I've certainly, in the job role before this, at the start of the pandemic, I said to my boss, listen, I'm helping out with schooling here, so here's what I'm going to do. And my boss didn't blink. It was, yeah, absolutely. From my point of view, I'm as a parent, one of the absolutes is if I need to go and help with schooling or taking care of a child, there is nothing that's going to stop me. So I sort of explained to my bosses and managers, saying, look, this is where I'm at. This is, you know, do you agree with that? And I think having that honest conversation again is something that we all need to be able to do. And as leaders, we just need to be able to understand this is going to happen, you know, deal with it and go with it.
Yeah, you're right. That is something that I've not adhered to enough, actually. You know, something's kicked off at home with the kids, and I've worried whether I need to dive out of the meeting that's really important or go and do the thing with the kids. And it's you're right, that the priority in those moments needs to be, you know, family needs to come first in those scenarios. And it's sometimes difficult because you're not sure how the reaction will be if you do that. There is still a fear in me, and I'm sure in others, that if I dive out this meeting, it looks unprofessional, or if I do this, it looks bad. It shows that, you know, I need to be on work, I need to be focused, and actually, there needs to be that understanding from all sides, and it needs to be vocalized as well. It needs to be something that our leaders are saying to us, we're saying to our teams. If you have something with your family that you need to sort, that is okay. Especially in the current scenario, we're not just working from home, we're working at home in a pandemic. There is a difference. You know, your kids are around, people need your help. Therefore, we accept that you're not going to be on it from 9 till 5. You're going to need to take breaks. You're going to need to go and look after your family. And I'll admit that's something I've not done enough, especially in this lockdown, the third lockdown. I've tunnel visioned on work too much and not helped the family. And I think that's something that going forward, I need to learn from that, and I need to make sure my team are aware that they need to take that on board as well.
Yeah, there are times when you're not available, and that's okay. I see. So Richard, perfectly leading on to that, playing devil's advocate, do you think there's a divide between even some bias from a leader or manager's perspective between employees with families and those who live alone? Prior to lockdown, there was that kind of sort of conversation happening, wasn't there, about sort of somebody with a son or daughter taking time off and not being talked about or being recognized behind the scenes or something like that. I think this is one of those things. I think it almost may flip around in that if you are on your own and for your mental health, you go during the day, right, I'm going for a walk because it's light now. I'm going to go and do that. That is my time. I think that's okay, and I think a lot more people accept that, actually. And I'm really, one of the things that was really interesting was one of the C-suite during my induction week actually said something like that. They were asked, how do you sort of deal with the stress and things? And she went, you know what? I'll go down the gym for a couple of hours if I need to, or I'll go out for a walk for a couple of hours. I make sure people know that's what I'm doing. And she said, look, you are absolutely allowed to do that. Make sure people, you're not leaving anybody in the lurch, but go and do it. Mm-hmm. And again, this is one of those things, go and do it. Take your time by the scruff of the neck and go and do it. Don't sit there and think, I can't do this because, what if somebody thinks wrong?
But do you think some of that, Shay, is some of that is, we work in technology, and technology, most of us work in technology, I believe, and it seems to be quite a forward-thinking industry. Are all industries following the same sort of route?
That's such an interesting question. I don't know. I think
I've got a friend, a very close friend, and I wouldn't say, I'd probably say some of those things that we don't think actually happen. I would probably say that they probably do in some industries.
Yeah, they do. I mean, so we can, I think, the banking industry and the insurance industry and things like that, the sort of city industries are notoriously harsh for people who want to take family time or want to take personal time and things like that. And I reckon I think that's a really interesting point. From experience, I think they're learning the hard way. So one of my last contracts was at an insurer, and when they were all sort of talking about, okay, yeah, it'll all be over by Christmas and everybody will be back in, it'll be fine. And it turns out it's not. There was an absolute massive shift in the way people had to start to think. And this, I think we're seeing more of now, or feeling more of now, that there's trust that people can work from home, that people are working to the best of their abilities. And you know what, from a cynical point of view, some of these managers from the city companies probably realize they're getting more out of their workers than when they were in the office. So they're just leaving it lie. If you want to take some time, okay, because I know that you're working so many more hours.
Do you think we'll start to see complete flexibility in working hours? Obviously, there's an allowance for an hour or so away, and understanding that we can now go and go and see to the kids or go and do X, Y, Z. But do we think we'll get to a stage where all jobs are now like, okay, you're contracted to work for 9 hours a day. You work 9 hours in any part of the day that you see fit, or do you think those business hours will remain and there'll be certain allowances within that?
I think it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because, part of the collaborative working model of agile, DevOps, whatever we're working in, is that you're able to work side by side with others. So, there will be flexibility. I don't think we'll ever be in a model where, you've got some of the team that are doing 4 hours in the morning, then they're breaking for 3 or 4 hours and doing an evening, and other teams that are doing different patterns. I think there always will be a core set of hours where it's good to have most people together at some point. I mean, I think one thing that this has done is it's made it more of a level playing field with our offshore teams. Again, for the same reason. And time zones, yes, they're half time zones, but if we're at home, we can start an hour or two earlier, possibly some days, and be online for more of the time with the team in India, or equally teams in the West Coast. You start your day later, you have a break to put your kids to bed, and you have another couple of hours online with them, and it just enables that collaborative model with other teams that you're working with, rather than just the team that are in the same time zone as you. So I think there is definitely going to be a flexibility. I don't think we'll ever go completely to everyone working whatever hours they want, but I think there'll be more openness to work what's best for you and what's best for the team, and have some agreement in place that suits everybody.
I agree, Simon. I think, like Shay was referring to earlier, that will often be driven by the employees or the expectation of the people joining those companies. Something that you said, Marco, when we were discussing this meetup was sat with me. That was about hybrid working. It used to be a nice to have, and now it's an expectation. People.
It used to be a benefit, and now it becomes an expectation.
Yeah. And I think that might be the case of flexible working as well. It just starts to become more. What I hope is that there start to be more part-time roles in tech, because I think that's a big disinhibitor for a lot of people. And if we really want to encourage people that have, other responsibilities that take up time, a great way to do that is to have more part-time roles. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that's more of something that's realistically on the horizon.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Beth. Yeah, we should definitely support that as leaders.
I think certainly we'll see that coming out in recruitment as well. I know you've all alluded to it, kind of in the conversations we've had before, but also today as well, is recruitment will change moving forward. The companies that don't offer remote working or hybrid model, they'll be the ones who quite quickly start to see people looking elsewhere. And if there is a great candidate on the market who has two offers, and one offers working from home 2 days a week and the other one doesn't, it will pretty much be a no-brainer for most people, I think. And certainly a lot of the conversations I'm having now are actually with people on the complete other end of it, where they're saying they're only looking to work remotely completely. Which again, I know Beth mentioned it earlier, that the talent pool's opened up so much more now, which is, it's got its pros and cons. But how do we think businesses can bring the power back into their hands, so to speak? Because it does put a lot of power into the candidate's hands, realistically, where they can say, oh well, if it's not remote working, I'm not interested. How can businesses bring the power back into their hands? How can they rein it in again? Stumped 4 people.
No, that's really interesting.
I think,
how do you bring it back? Wow.
I think it's less about bringing the power back into their hands and being a collaborative. How can we meet in the middle almost, and making sure that there's benefit on both sides. I don't think in this current, I'm not sure there is a way they can bring the power back into their hands, other than as soon as they start putting restrictive rules in place about you only work these core hours, or you only do this, or you have to be online at this point, we're going to check you making sure we'll check when you're on Skype or whatever it is. It suddenly becomes restrictive, micromanaging, and people don't want to be in it. So it's trying to find that balance between, okay, we need to do what's best for the employees, knowing that if we treat them in the best possible way, they'll do their best work for us and we'll all be winners. So I'm not quite sure how we find that medium. I'm not sure what it equals, but yeah.
Yeah, I think certainly a lot of the conversations I've been having, the common theme is that, like you say, it's not really a question of bringing the power back into their hands. I think ultimately what will separate, if there is a business which can't go to a hybrid model, for whatever reason they can't go to a hybrid model, what will separate them from a business that can tends to be the strength of the product, or the strength of the project, or the opportunities that are provided within that. If there's a business who works on something really cool, they're working with like new technology, or they're working with somebody who they really admire, that I think tends to outweigh flexibility in a lot of ways. Because I think, everyone wants to kind of work with more flexibility. But if you get the opportunity to work with somebody that you really admire and you can learn and progress off, I think that might outweigh it. And I think that's where businesses might start investing a little bit more into, is actually how can we strengthen our products, how can we strengthen our offering if it does come down to a bit of a gunfight as it was between candidates and companies.
It's going to cost them. If you want me to work 100% in the office, I'll tell you what, it's going to cost you. And that's where I think more people will go. And it'll be okay, because the companies that say, hey, look, we have to have, the way we are set up, we want people in 100% of the time, they will learn that it'll cost them. But you will unfortunately then have that less flexibility. Flexibility may mean that you just have to step back a little bit from a bit of money. We were talking before coming on here, not having to go into the office saves me $6,500 a year. So that's a pretty serious whack that I'm getting back, and that's quite nice. Would I accept a job that is £6,500 less because it's 100% at home? I don't know about now because of the way that the world is, but in the future, I think that may be the sort of differentiator. You'll get companies that say, look, we need you in 100% of the time, but we will pay this. You get this. You get the extra money. You get all of these different perks, and that's how they're gonna grab you. Maybe.
I think they need to change their benefit model as well. I mean, things like car allowance and season tickets may not be the options that appeal to people anymore. It might be offering a desk allowance or home office allowance. You can get one of them home office hubs for outside in the garden for $2-3 grand. If that's instead of a car allowance, then great, you're set up. It's something that people can, if they change the way they look at things, and rather than giving the perks that enable you to get to the office, giving you the perks that enable you to have a good working environment wherever you see fit you need to work, then that will help people want to work for you. Or I just can't see us being back, especially in our tech industry. I know other industries are different, but I just can't see us being back in a place where majority of companies are asking us to be in the office majority of the time. I just think it's going to be a as and when you need to be in the office, if you need to have a team workshop, or if you need to do something that involves collaboration or something like that. I just can't see it other than that. So let's change what they're offering to reflect the home working nature of what we are now doing.
I think it's a really good point from what Carolyn just said. Obviously, they'll save a lot of money on office space and facilities, but how do you now manage less people being in the office? A lot of companies have now moved out of their offices completely, and then we'll look to find a new space. How do you manage, now you've got less people in it, who's going to be in on what days? How big an office do you need? How's that now managed from here onwards? Because that's a new challenge that comes in. Is that I guess we wouldn't have faced before?
Yeah, so I think some of the big ceremonies, if you're talking from an agile point of view, do well to be all in one place. Maybe you have that, and then everything else is as and when on a rota basis. But I think if you've got a good team that are performing reasonably right now, everybody being remote, then you can almost leave it up to them. If they want to come into the office, they come into the office. If they want to be at home, and just leave it at that. An interesting thing is many companies, as you said, are downsizing their offices and going 100% to hot desking. You don't really have a team area anymore. You don't have a team whiteboard probably. So being in the office, the only advantage is to eyeball somebody. And you know what? You got the webcam now, so maybe you got to just leave it to the team to decide. If you as a leader particularly want people in, schedule it way in advance. You got to be as forward thinking as possible. We're going to do a project planning in 3 weeks' time, guys. I'd like us all to be in on this. Lunch is provided. The company will pay your travel, but this is a compulsory meeting. You're giving people 3 weeks. Brilliant, do it. If it's coming tomorrow, all hands, unless something's on fire and really on fire, I'm going to have to tell you, sorry, made plans. washing my hair that day or something, you know.
Yeah, you're right. There definitely has to be that element of in advance going forward, like you say, and plenty of it as well. Because now that we're in this world, we can take back. I've certainly felt like I can take back more of the school runs and stuff like that. So if you need me in the office at 9 o'clock, I need to rearrange my school pickups and drop-offs. So there needs to be that flexibility, enough time in advance to be able to sort that.
I think a very small thing that companies could do, which wouldn't really cost them anything, and they could implement straight away, and would mean a lot to some people, is making sure that if someone attends a virtual conference during a workday, that their diary is completely cleared. They do not have to schedule meetings. They do not have to take calls. They are allowed to give 100% focus to that event, as they would if it was an in-person event, because I know that kind of that's really stretching people, because they're feeling like they're not having the same opportunities to grow their skills, because they're not allowed to go to an event properly. Even mentally from their desk, they can't attend an event properly. So I think that's a small thing, a small gesture that a company could implement quite cheaply, that would make a big difference to people.
I think you're right. And I experienced speaking at a conference this last year virtually, and having to literally do my talk and then go back to meetings again, and not get to experience the full enjoyment that comes with watching talks back to back for a few hours. So, and socializing, even if it's through the virtual channels in the platform. But yeah, you're right. If we're enabling people to go to conferences, let them go to a conference and not have work going on in the background. And it's the same with the training course. You know, if you're doing some training, then switch off your emails or do whatever you can so that you're not disturbed by anything else while you're doing it. But in this virtual world, you're sitting in the same desk as you are if you're doing your work. So they feel like your employee or your colleagues feel like, oh, you're just at your desk, so I can contact you. I need you to answer this question. And it just, it's little things like that, but it's difficult, isn't it? It's that differentiating between work, leisure, home life. You're all in the same place for all three of them. And even, I'm going to take some holiday. What are you going to do? Well, I can't do anything. It's a pandemic, so I'm going to be at home anyway. Oh, well, if I need you, I'll be able to call you then, won't I? Well, not really, but yeah, I guess I'll be here. So
you gotta. I have to sort of come in here. You've got out of office. You've got you
absolutely have, and you're probably more disciplined on it than I am sometimes. But if someone needs me, sometimes it's just a case of I'll take a 5-minute phone call and deal with it. But you're right. There needs to be. It's the one thing I think really struggled. I know I'm not alone in this. Is differentiating between the two.
And that's it. Use out of office. Use it like thoroughly. If you want an hour off, put yourself out of office. I could just absolutely do it. Again, this is about sort of taking handle of your time. You are not at anyone's bidding ever. You are your own person. So take handle of your time, and that means. And I forget to do it. I totally do. The reason I'm sort of now preaching this is because I remembered we've got out of office on our Outlook the other day, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to use that all the time. Use it. Just use it, because it's there and you can schedule it and you can just put it in and nobody can disturb you. So you're there and away, and tell people you're away. Don't be afraid of it. Don't slink around and go, I know I'm at my desk. Go, guys, I'm away. Don't call. Don't write. I'm not here. I'm not going to answer anything until tomorrow. I'm gone. And make sure they know that. And then they'll understand, because when you're gone, you're gone. If you're gone and you're I'll answer a little bit here, they'll know that there's a little noodle that they can get in, and it becomes bigger.
You're right. It's setting expectations. And I think I've talked about it before where, I'll answer emails in the middle of the night, and then suddenly people have the expectations. I'll answer emails in the middle of the night so we can send them emails and expect a response straight away. You're right. It's setting the right expectations and then sticking to them.
Yeah. And it's not too late to go back. If you've been in your job a few years or something like that, and there's the expectation there, it's okay to say, guys, you know what? I realized I need a bit more time. So this is the way I'm going to work now. And, this is the strong conversation and communication we all need to be developing online and virtual. And back when we come in person, is that sort of upfront and honest. This is my time now. I'm going to take this time. And please don't, respect that. And we have respect for others, that if somebody says they're offline, don't bloody email them. Unless the house is on fire, what the hell? It'll wait until tomorrow,
You're right.
And geez, if the house is on fire, they're not the guys you want to be emailing. It's somebody else,
Wow, we've spoken for an hour and a half.
I was going to say the conversation has absolutely flown by here. I think a good time to now open it up to
come play.
Yeah, open it up to anybody in the audience. If you want to unmute, put your camera at Ben's straight away. That mute came off quicker before I'd even finished saying it. It was off.
No,
I predicted this at the start.
Hello.
Hey guys, thanks for coming. Thank you. Thanks to those of you who have been able to stay as well. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
I was going to say we've held on to 24 people until just now for an hour and a half, which is incredible.
I've been waiting for this. I've really been missing the meetups with the socializing bit.
Well, welcome and cheers. Thank you.
This has been really great. I'm just sorry I came so late, but I had to feed the kids and do the shopping. But this has been really good just to chat to. I haven't been able to chat to many of the managers and leaders, but this has been wonderful. So thank you all for being there.
Awesome. Yeah.
You've put some great stuff in the chat, Caroline.
Yeah.
Caroline.
Had a really worthy night. Lovely.
I was going to say thanks to all. Yeah, been really engaging. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thanks for your comments and questions, Richard. Been pretty awesome, mate.
I think Shay's just saying that because you were the person who asked to vote for Shay.
Shay, whatever you're running for, Shay, I'm in.
That's my new T-shirt. I'm going to get that made.
Wonderful.
Have we got any other from the audience? Is there any other thoughts that kind of haven't been brought up today that you did have beforehand, or anything that you kind of wanted addressed beforehand that hasn't been highlighted?
So I had a point. You guys spoke quite a lot earlier about not being able to see what your team is doing in terms of being able to help them progress. I kind of want to turn that in the head and kind of remind you, they can't see you either.
Mum, he's coming.
Make sure that you kind of take into account that leading by example and leading, like being visible as a leader, is also really difficult fully remote.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that, and it's just being present for stuff. And if one of your team sends an email saying something's going on, it's finding a way of backing them up. It's trying to find a way to support them. It's being someone that's willing to make calls with them around so that they can see that you're doing that. If it's not all. You're right. It's about making sure that your team sees that you're present. It's not even as much as some ways seeing that you're leading them. It's seeing that you're present and with them, and you're on the journey at the same time with them, and just finding ways to demonstrate that. At the moment, one of my team is learning exploratory testing, and I'm learning it with him. I'm going through the motions with him so that I can say, look, you're the one that's going to take the glory when we start doing this, but let's do this together. Let's talk it through. Let's go ahead and try it out. And it's making a difference because the team are seeing that I'm not someone that sits in my ivory tower and tells them what to do. I'm willing to get my hands dirty and try it out with them. And at the moment, I think that's crucial more than anything else, is they can see that I'm willing to get involved and be at the ground level with them.
Yeah, being present is really important. I think whenever I start leading a team, a couple of things that I say to them is I will be honest with you as much as possible. I'll give you as much information as I have. If I have not told you something, it's because it's not ready to be told, or I've been asked not to. So understand that there are things that I can't tell you, but I will tell you as much as possible. Now that's great in person because you got the water cooler chats, you got the stand up in the morning where you're hanging out and things like that. And it's an easy sort of like FYI. I think it's difficult to do that over some sort of chat or something like that, but it might be worth trying to do it. And I must admit, I've not done it. And I'm thinking out loud here that it's something that is possibly lacking from my online or my hybrid communication style that could do with sort of upgrading and doing more often.
I have a little question for the room. I say a show of hands, but obviously not everyone's on cam, but take it back pre-pandemic, before the pandemic, how many people were already regularly working from home most of the time?
I'd probably say 50% of the time.
Not at all. None of my team were. Nobody was.
I've been working from home for 2 years.
Yeah, I worked from home for 2.5 years, and I wanted to go back into an office, so I actually left that job and found a new job. So I had an office base because, for me, again, back to the whole being single, living alone type of thing. I live alone, so my social time, I enjoy going to the office. I enjoy those chats and everything else. So yeah, it's a difficult one.
I was 2 days a week at home, but because most people were in the office, there was that expectation that you'd be in the office for the big meetings or the big discussions. So it was you never felt like you got 2 days to work from home, because you always felt like, am I doing something wrong by taking this day to work from home? Not that I was ever told that, but other people on the projects that you were having the meetings with would almost expect that you'd be in the room for the meetings. And then you're like, oh, well, I better shift my days I'm working from home because I need to be in for that meeting. And then there has to be something else comes up. So your 2 days suddenly becomes 1 day. It's, yeah.
Yes, the amount of times that I've shifted heaven and earth to be in the office for that day, a month that I'm in the office, and then other relatively trivial seeming things have come up, and that thing isn't happening that day you're in now. And it's like you were saying earlier about respect, Shay. It's like people don't respect how much effort people actually put in to come in the office when they're not based in the office. That's
slightly off topic. I don't know if anybody saw, well, not off topic, on topic, but that everyone saw today that UK workers have taken fewer sick days in 2020 than they have since 1995, despite the pandemic.
Really?
I think that's a pretty telling stat. I mean, Rich, you're shaking your head.
Well, I'm just saying, is this new leniency, etc., part of that? Because obviously previously, in order to get the time away and get time with their families, etc., they potentially would call in sick. So has this leniency, this extra time, etc. Now they don't need to do that, so they get to keep their sick days and the holidays, and they get the time with their families.
Yeah, I wonder how much furlough has impacted that as well.
Good point.
Yeah.
I also wonder how much people just being indoors and not exposing themselves to additional cold germs or flu germs or whatever has played a part in that too.
That's a really good point.
I would also say there will be people that have literally gone, I'm still ill, but I'll still roll out of bed and sit at my laptop and work for the day. No one needs to know that I've got a cold. No one needs to know I've got a migraine or whatever. I'm just going to try and do what I can and still work through it.
I was going to say there's a big difference between waking up in the morning feeling pretty rough, having to then get on, say, the underground for an hour and then going to the office, and then as opposed to, like you say, rolling out of bed, dressing gown, a cup of lemon and ginger, and then just sitting on your laptop.
Or even sitting in bed and have the day in bed, but you're working.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Not that I'd advise doing that, but still.
You're absolutely right, because before I was working at home regularly, the kind of I'm going to call in sick is can I face getting to the office? Whereas now you can just turn around and go, I've got a bit of a headache. I'm going to take a paracetamol. I'm going to go lie down for an hour, but I'll be back. And then you come back on and you just keep going. And I don't know whether that's actually healthy or not. Maybe this is a mistake.
Also, slightly shameful admission, but there have been occasions where I've had a mid-afternoon nap and then gone back to work afterwards.
It's actually studies say.
You're right.
I like it.
It's your lunch break.
Yeah. Well, studies say it's actually incredibly efficient for your concentration. It's very good.
Totally
actually.
is. That's 100% the reason. Yeah.
Last one, I went through a redundancy, and actually COVID wasn't updated into the company's sick policy. So if someone actually took time off specifically for COVID, it wasn't recorded as sickness. So again.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting stat that I think everybody's nailed it on the head there. That we're the majority of us are software testers. We saw the hole in that quite quickly on that statistic.
Yeah, I figured this out quite early working with
testers. No, Simon's got a little
pandemic puppy.
Dog.
Exactly.
I'm not looking at the screen.
Did you see, Simon, that hey Cassie. Oh no, I should have already been finished by now. Do you want to come say hello?
It's not wrong, to be fair.
Hello.
She said, Mummy did tell me that. Do you want to come say hello?
They're the best hint droppers, aren't they?
Yeah.
Kids.
I think my puppies are saying the same thing. I need to get out.
Someone's back at school.
Have a wave, Kathy. Sorry, I probably won't finish that sentence now. I can't remember where I was at.
I was looking forward to it.
You'll have to remind me where I was at. I'll figure it out.
I think I may have to run, if that's okay.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Simon, that was good.
Let me put you down.
I was going to say, if we've talked this to the nines, it could be a good place to end. Unless anyone's got any other comments, any other thoughts that they want to share with the group before we finish up. I feel like this has been exactly.
Can I make one obvious plug?
Yeah, please do. Is it to do with stickers?
It's to do with the podcast. Listen to the podcast.
Yeah, get on it.
New episode out this weekend on personal brand, which was Beth's inspiration. So.
Oh no, mine's not arrived yet. Oh.
You didn't submit a question to our AMA suite, Shay.
No, I didn't.
I can send some if you want to have some. Send me your address. I'll send some stickers.
Also, I posted a link in the chat earlier for the tester hangout that a few of us drop into during the day. So if this is really important, if you just want somebody to just sit beside, and you don't need to say anything or whatever, this is just come and join. The link is the same every day. I'm here. Sometimes Ben comes in. Simon's been in the past. There are a couple of people who aren't here tonight who are also there. So please come and join us. Sit in the room. There'll be somebody who'll pitch up in about 15, 20 minutes if there's nobody there. But it's really good. If you're feeling like you just want to get away from it or just want to talk, whatever, come and chat.
Yeah, definitely agree. It's a good forum. Yeah,
amazing.
Thank you.
If we're allowed to make plugs, tester of the day, go nominate people.
Oh yes,
send a link.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. Tester of the day, do it.
Any more plugs? Right, I'm open to it. Not got long left. Okay, good stuff. Well, look, guys, thank you so much for everyone coming. All the good questions in the chat, all the good comments that have come out of it as well. And of course, thank you to our panelists, our speakers. They've been brilliant. I'm sure you'll all agree. And yeah, really looking forward to the next one. But look, everyone, have a great evening. Enjoy the weekend in a couple of days' time. And yeah, we can all look forward to a hybrid world coming soon. Be keen to hear everyone's thoughts once we're actually in the thick of it in a few months' time. But yeah, any questions post this, just drop me a line on LinkedIn. Always happy to have a chat. But yeah, thanks very much. Have a nice evening.
Actually, just before people go,
thanks, Marco.
I'm just going to head to the tester hangout now. If anybody wants to sit and chat, if I've still got some beer left.
Oh, what's the URL, Shay?
Yeah, could you paste it in there?
Here we go. bit.ly/tester hangout.
Always with the after party, Shay. Well done.
Hey
guys. Bye.
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 Bye. Bye. It was great. Thank you.